From the center of the galaxy and the Imperial Senate Chamber, this is ForceCenter's show about Star Wars, pop culture, the ultimate adventure, reviewing Andor. I'm Ken Knapsack.
I'm Jen Landa.
I'm Joseph Scrimshaw, and we switched to this little intro when we came back from doing Other Center, calling it a show about Star Wars pop culture and the ultimate adventure, life itself. And Ken, like a good broadcaster, switches it up and has fun with it. But I bring up the life itself because, man, I feel like this is an episode where we're talking about the ultimate adventure of life itself, because these are fantastic Star Wars episodes, grounded in the history of Star Wars. And it is hard not to think about the ultimate adventure of life itself when watching these episodes of
A lot of things, beat by beat, history, personal stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a week. We're going to dive in. As always, we want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. We always like to recommend an audiobook. We're still recommending Rebel Rising by Beth Revis, a, quote, YA novel, which I sometimes just think that YA should be tossed out because it's a great, wonderful story about Jyn, Saw, and the rebellion during this time. Download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audio book. All right, now we're going to dive into episodes 7, 8, and 9 of Andor's second and final season. Joseph, a lot to get to.
Yeah, watch them announce a surprise season 3. Just the ongoing adventures. There should be an Andor spinoff that's like the Droids cartoon, but it's about B2 emo on the farm. Just having fun adventures. Yeah, Cassian. Yeah. His hit pop song from his animated series.
Look, there's a lot of time between these blocks of stories, right? So, hey, let's get that Luthen and Clea spinoff. Let's the Erskine years. We got a lot to cover.
Yep, a lot of room. But hey, we have plenty to cover in these 3 episodes. Like Ken said, episode 7 called Messenger, episode 8 called Who Are You, episode 9 Welcome to the Rebellion. All episodes written by Dan Gilroy and directed by Janis, I apologize, I don't know the pronunciation, Metz, a Danish filmmaker who has made many documentaries, often about important political issues. He's made a few feature films, including a recent one called All the Old Knives for Amazon Prime, and he has directed some episodes of True Detective as well as some other television. I always like looking at who these directors are because really different people get a swing at Star Wars with the advent of Disney Plus, and I think some directors that really fit Andor are being picked out. But this director, I also wanted to be sure to run down their credits. They've certainly done some features, they've certainly done some television, but a lot of what they have done is hard-hitting, socio-political, real-world documentaries. So this is a director whose resume is very similar to Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. So for people who are, sometimes worried about, does she have the narrative chops? She's done narrative work, but she really has a solid background in the same thing that this wonderful director does, which is hard-hitting real-life documentaries. Jennifer, any thoughts on the writer-director team?
No, I watched Dan Gilroy's interview with The Backstory, I believe is the YouTube channel. It was really, really fascinating to hear their process and how he works with his brother, Tony Gilroy, and they approach stories, including Bo Willimon and the Star Wars team. And we'll get into that today because it's really interesting.
Awesome. Ken, any thoughts on the writer-director team?
I wonder if I hadn't looked that up, and I appreciate you doing that because that not only for the Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy connection, that's wonderful, but yeah, it kind of shows, especially that second episode in this arc. Documentary feel, I guess, but it's more even just how they use the news team, which is part of the script, of course. But it felt real, which is a lot of people are reacting to, and all that makes a lot of sense. Good connections.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it because I think some of the clear visual language of certain shots, like I was wondering last week, are we going to keep up with the perfectly framed person in the center from behind, marching through an environment or looking through a circular door? And yes, we are, which is great to keep that consistent visual language through Andor. But I thought there was a strong difference in directorial style that matched really well. Ariel Kleiman's stuff had a lot of very kind of stylistic flourishes, I thought. And I thought this was much more grounded and documentary, and just like we are on the ground experiencing
Yeah.
these horrors with our pals.
Up close.
So I thought, great job. So let's jump into overall reactions, both to these episodes and to our experiences of viewing them, because I think that plays so much into how we respond of where we were at physically, how we how we made time to watch all three of these big episodes. Ken, what was your overall reaction?
Absolutely loved it. I think the praise tossed on these episodes from all corners of the internet is accurate and reflective of three wonderful episodes, especially the last two. The first one was paired nicely with the other two. We'll talk about the release schedule again, maybe if we need to. But it's hard to say. I loved it in that sense if you're watching something horrendous, but it is needed. It is powerful. It is raw, and it's also tension filled in a fun way too. That ninth episode, there's a lot at stake, but that felt like that spy thriller we had been promised years ago when the show was first announced under Stephen Schiff and a different team. But it paid off there, and I'll call that one of my favorite hours of Star Wars television, if not television overall. I think it's important to say that too, in an era where we're still looking down on genre. Still calling things, either cartoons or pew 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 and everything. Yeah, this is Star Wars. It has been Star Wars, but this is also just great storytelling.
Yeah, Jennifer, what was your overall reaction? And did you have to work to make time to fully digest? We talked last time about the great meal analogy. How did your buffet of Andor go down this week?
I do struggle with this 3-episode format. The first episode, I really had a hard time with getting into. I have a lot of stuff going on, in life and with kids and whatever. So I had a hard time focusing. By the time we got to episode 8 and 9, I was locked in. I feel like for me personally, I would prefer either a 1-episode or 2-episode release. It's just how I work. How I watch things. It was too much. In fact, after episode 8, I sat there and I'm like, I need a break.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so emotionally exhausted from everything. I wanted a week to marinate, to process, to literally sleep on it, because so that's how it works, right? Like when you've absorbed something, you sleep on it, you have new perspectives the next day. I couldn't do that. I had like 15 minutes. I grabbed a snack and some coffee and I went right back in. So you can, yeah.
I did the same thing. It was a bad week for me personally. Some big changes in my life, and so I had planned to order some really bad guilty food. I ordered some Detroit style pizza, and the pizza choice was much like the episodes, very thick and hard to eat, like just too much. Love you, Detroit style pizza. Not wrong. I made the wrong choice, so I had to get up and walk around my now empty home, and it was fun in Star Wars, but it was a lot, Jen. It's a lot. I'm with you.
Yeah. I had a very similar experience. As anybody watching on YouTube can tell, I got a different background today because I'm in Minneapolis at my dad's house doing some work on the post-production for the film, which is great fun, but very stressful. Yeah. And then I'm like, great, I'm so looking forward to these episodes of Andor. I'm so excited. I got home at 10:30, 11 on Tuesday from working on stuff and watched the first episode and thought it was fantastic. Some of my favorite stuff is in that first episode, but then got so sleepy that I called my wife and said, I gotta watch the rest of Andor in the morning and I'm gonna go to sleep. And I wasn't thinking about it, and before I went to bed, I just opened Blue Sky and immediately started seeing spoilers, and it got me so mad it woke me up, and I watched the 2 episodes anyway. And it was that literally and I'm not mad at anybody. Everybody's different. I get it. People are excited and they want to share. I'm not harsh on anybody else's buzz about wanting to share their love of the show. But it's just a reality of if I don't want to hear details, I gotta entirely ignore the internet in order to ingest it, and that got me so amped. And then I watched the 2 episodes. Yeah, they were great. They were fabulous. But it strangely adds to this sort of tension of this has to be done. You don't have any time for your personal life. It just has to be done now. So added some good vibes actually to these episodes.
Yeah. They
So
are
we
like
all,
mini masterpieces, in my opinion, which is what I struggle with, is that it's like served in this very modern streaming age format of like immediacy. It's like a fast food format. And I'm like, you're giving me this incredible, well thought out dish that's like a masterpiece. And I'm like having to like, digest it so fast. And I really felt like we could have had a whole conversation for the week just on episode 7 or
oh,
episode 8. You know what I mean? And I do wonder, and they'll never show us the numbers, but I do wonder because there is a lot of great buzz on this show. Could newer people have caught up if it was one episode by per week? Or, I mean, you really do have to have watched the first season. So I don't know. I don't know if it affects their numbers at all, but I do kind of wonder. Like my husband fell off and he's like, I want to watch it. I can't, I'm sorry. I can't catch up to you now. It's episode 9, so anyways, just a
yeah.
thought.
I mean, I think it's a big experiment for them, and I think they'll probably get really big numbers on people who are just like, well, I'll wait until it's done, because people are used to binging, particularly complicated shows like Andor. They're used to binging and not having to track it week to week. So I bet they'll get a big second bump. I hope that Disney Plus, in its commissioning of television shows, either says, let's go back to the basics we've learned over decades of broadcasting and make sure that every episode is a meal onto itself with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Or we can do this kind of cool Andor model where it's in arcs, but then let's just make them a movie. Like I'm enjoying these episodes of each week of Andor. Is they're a movie where I have to skip through the the credits, but to me, I'm ingesting them as mostly one thing because I think the arcs are built as one thing, more than the individual episodes.
Totally.
Yeah, so just embracing it for me. But it is a time and eating commitment. Ken, do you have any overall reactions to the actual big picture substance? We'll, of course, get into favorite moments and themes, but any sort of big picture reaction to the content of the episode?
I'm there for it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was real palpable tension and dread and even frustration, where I found myself, I was more like Rylance, like, and even Cassian at points, like, do you all not see what they're doing? Like, this is slowly happening. They're trapping you. What are you doing? Like, stand on your principles, but stand alive. Like, it was real, felt frustration. And it was all earned. It was all wonderfully detailed down to the horrors of the real world, which I know we'll discuss. But then to flip it around and have just the absolute drama of the 9th episode, and there's canon connection stuff to talk about. And I too, like a lot of folks, I know you did, Joseph, too, flipped on Star Wars Rebels season 3, episode 18 right after that, and I think it connects rather nicely. With give or take a little rough edge here and there, or some duct tape to put some things together. But it worked for me as a Star Wars fan. I'm a Star Wars fan. We're Star Wars fans, and I do judge things on how it makes me feel as a Star Wars fan. And these episodes absolutely worked for me.
Yeah, no, I thought there was a lot with where Mothma was at emotionally that tracked. Yeah, Jennifer, what was your big picture reaction to the actual content? Did obviously you enjoyed it and you've called it a masterpiece, but what were you responding to?
Because the show for me is character driven. It's not plot driven, although the plot is obviously very, very important and relates to the canon connections. But this is about the characters. It's why we care about what's happening. It gives weight to every scene, to each moment that we could really you could just, on Dedra's arc alone, right? Like we could really analyze that. Why? What's going on? Cyril's arc. It's just, there's so much happening. And I think it's really one of the best TV shows, streaming shows that we've had, and not just Star Wars. I think when you start saying it's the best Star Wars show, well, no, I'd say it's one of the best shows, period. I actually think there are times where I forget that it's a Star Wars show, and that's no shade to Andor. But having just watched The Empire Strikes Back and The Phantom Menace, like it is a very different feel. It's much more, Andor is much more grounded, although I do like the appearance of the Force healer. I think that that's important, kind of introducing that mysticism, which for me is what Star Wars is all about. But this is a different story. It's more granular about how the rebellion started, blah blah blah. So yeah, I really enjoy it. but it is interesting. I did not want to go back and watch these episodes a second time.
Mm.
I'd been through enough turmoil with these characters. I'm good. I'm good.
Mhm.
I'm on to the next.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a fantastic show. Very well done.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought I really enjoyed that this arc truly felt different, and some of that is just the speeding toward the inevitable
Mhm.
of where it's going, and so that there was a little bit more of a foot on the gas with both the characters and the plot, and all the characters feeling that things are coming to a head and we have to respond. We're out of time.
Mm.
Um, the general vibe that I really liked is I thought it was brutal with a bigger side of hope. Like hope has always been there in Andor because we know where it's all going. And rewatching the first season, I thought there were little sparkles of hope and joy throughout. But this was, we'll talk in the themes. There's so much about what are we actually fighting for. And I just felt in this arc, you had the utter brutality of seeing a massacre, of seeing the sadness of Cyril and Dedra, seeing the sadness of Bix leaving. But like, I wanted Cassian and Bix to adopt me and let me live in their beautiful, spacious. It looked like they were living in the White Lotus. It was in the connection to the nature, the connection. Characters like Vel, who had been, feeling like a puppet, now in these warm earth tones, making choices for herself. That sense of connection and family growing out of Yavin. There was a lot in here that was very, very hopeful of we've all been through hell, but we are heading toward slightly better days. That made me really feel like the episode had a different flavor, or the arc had a different flavor than just sort of like, here's more torture and here's more desperation. Even though it was a bleak episode. My other big picture reaction is I thought that this arc was really fascinating in that it had no choice but to tie itself closer to canon Star Wars. With the early part of season 1 of Andor, they had to kind of do the dance around the where is Andor from and the fest thing and all that. But other than that, it was wide open world building, and that world building is closing in some ways. So there was the interesting thing of sometimes fans really, really don't like Star Wars or other franchises to spend time explaining to you how things came to be. And this had a lot of that. This had like how he met K2SO, how Mon Mothma escaped, how Melshi ended up there. It had a lot of energy of putting all the pieces in place to match up with the lore. And that's, not a thing that the show has had to do a ton before. So that made it feel different to me.
Mhm.
And then we'll talk more about it, obviously, but I just really want to celebrate the Force Healer. That was probably my favorite thing in the entire arc. That I love Andor being a show that says this side of Star Wars has existed since, Princess Leia was
Mhm.
a rebel spy who got thrown into a prison cell and tortured by her own father. The bleak, hard rebel reality has been a part of Star Wars since the beginning. Andor is a show that's like, well, what if A New Hope was all about Leia and we kept the camera on her every second she was being tortured? And Andor just digging down into that different flavor has been fantastic, but I want it to feel like it is a part of this entire galaxy, and bringing in, as you said, the mysticism, the spirituality, and the hope and the peace and the clarity and all these beautiful words and emotions that came with that Force Healer into Andor, which was just fantastic. And the way it set up Cassian's journey, I'm excited to talk about more. I thought that was just fantastic.
Jen?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we'll dive into it later.
Awesome. Sounds good. Before we get into the rest of the stuff, in terms of like the real world impacts, do you guys want to just talk about how that felt big picture now, or dive into it as we go on the themes?
I think we could dive into a little bit of it now because I think it's very clear. It's part of the discussion. It's obviously it has the feeling of ripped from the headlines, but really, as Tony has said many times. We wrote this 5 years ago. It's not from the headlines; it's from history, which do make the headlines. So I think it's absolutely valuable to maybe, I don't want to say get out of the way, but to dive in first, or at least address it because it's big.
Yeah. Yeah. Jen, what moments hit you as being hard to separate from the real world, and how did that impact how you process the show?
I don't, something that Dan Gilroy was talking about was that really, obviously, and everyone has talked about, history repeats itself.
Hmm.
Um, obviously. So in their minds, when they were writing this, as you said, Ken, several years ago, they had the rise, how does this happen with the rise of Hitler, the rise of Stalin, the rise of Mao? That's like what they were fascinated by. The fact that it's timely is unfortunate to our current reality, that we are repeating history. And this is kind of what happens when you have somebody who comes in and is an authoritarian. And what do? They want to spread propaganda, and they have these news sources that share that propaganda, right? It's all these beats that we have seen throughout history. And so what Dan Gilroy was saying was that he hopes that even 10 years from now, 20 years from now, this show will still feel timely, whether it's something that's happening here in the US or something that's happening elsewhere in the world, unfortunately, right? But for me, Mon Mothma's speech was the most impactful, not just because of the content, but really the risk that she was taking to stand up
Hmm.
for what is right, which, a lot of senators have a difficult time doing.
Hmm. And I loved seeing the depiction that the other senators were profiting by loudly repeating the propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great context to elevate what Mothma did, because I
Mm-hmm.
think when you're not concentrating on the history of authoritarianism and how propaganda and truth gets closed off, it seems silly. It seems like a fable. It's like I mean, it was kind of the emperor has no clothes, except for Mothma said the emperor has no truth. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but when you think about it from that perspective, it's like, well, why didn't everybody just stand up and say that Hitler was lying? Like, well, because it's extremely difficult. That simple act that feels like it should be accessible is not. Um, yeah, I think Mothma's speech is the point that was most powerful to me, because it's so directly what's happening. The attempt to control the narrative, and the attempt to have, with quotes like alternative facts floating around. And right now with the Trump administration just blatantly lying in court with things like Elon Musk isn't the head of Doge. Like, come on, you just want us to believe something that is obviously not true as a means of power. You want to do things and then deny them. Elon Musk wants to be able to make a Nazi salute and then go, no, I didn't. And he gets power from both. He gets power from doing it, and he gets power from also being able to deny it and hide like a child. Um, so those things are going on. And I think part of what affected me about it is because of the way the election turned out in America. We are dealing with this very, very directly right now. But if the election had gone the other way, the fundamental issue of a lot of propaganda and a loss of a shared objective truth is something we would still be struggling with, because that started long ago and is something that we've talked about many times. Affects not just politics, big politics, it affects how people talk about headlines about pop culture stuff, of reacting to spin, reacting to propaganda, and not reacting to objective agreed upon truth. So that was the thing that hit me the hardest.
Yeah,
Ken?
I think in just being able to go into the details of the Gorman massacre and take a Star Wars canon point, and we talked about how they addressed it with the Tarkin connection and everything like that, to actually go, well, what is this beyond just let's depict it, let's explain down to the beats, down to the details. And I'm speaking of frustration. It was just that panic, that frustration of almost like, what would you do? What side would you be on? And that's so drawn from history, so drawn from so many things given the title of massacre in our world, and even with what's going on with Mothma's speech. It's hard to hear that and not think of Israel and Palestine and the genocide there, and what's going on in Gaza, what continues to go on in Gaza, what continues to go on with the truth around it, and who speaks out, and who just continues with the status quo without any kind of question. But there's even beyond that. Our listener Rick Villanueva, go to his Blue Sky, did a great thread on the massacre of Mexico City in 1968. I don't know if there's an interview that backs up not what Rick was saying, but backs up the idea. But it's very clear that they drew from that. In ways that are very detailed. Snipers on roofs, shots fired, and even the number of deaths and injured. And obviously that's going to be probably close to Diego Luna's heart. But I mean, Boston Massacre, think of that. Kent State, which is 4 dead in Ohio, that had the detail of inexperienced National Guardsmen, young and fearful, sent into a situation in which they maybe felt they had no control and fear overcame them. There's those little details that I thought were such a great use of history. And Star Wars, I'm not going to get into the Star Wars done this before, but Star Wars has done this before. The introduction of Saw Gerrera is absolutely a news headline from 1982, right? With Russia and Afghanistan, the Mujahideen and all the stuff we talked about on our Clones Report. This has been done before, but it was just fascinating to see it broken down and turned into a great episode. But now, when you think of the Gorman Massacre, in terms of Star Wars, it's not just going to be, I wonder, did some Imperials do bad things? You're going to know, you're going to see it, you're going to connect with the absolute horror, but how it happened, the details of it, how it happened. And yes, I think all of this is relevant to the moment, but it's always been like this. It always will be like this. Like you said, no matter which way the election goes in our country, this is always going to be going on, and it's going to be going on in even our country. And this will all happen again unless we combat it. And I think going to the Mothma speech too, that had that affected me. Of the lesson is what you do when you discover this truth. There's a lot of characters along the way. Cyril, we'll dive into. Cyril has this moment of, I think, discovering the truth. Deidre has this moment of discovering the truth, and they react to it quite differently than maybe they should, we'd want. But other characters have discovered this truth along the way too, just as we discovered this truth growing up in this country or in this world. The truth doesn't change, but it's a war over it. There's a manipulation of it, but also there is the moment in which you wake up to it. And I think that's what I took from these episodes, and just seeing the Gorman Massacre on this level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the Gorman Massacre is obviously really powerful, really difficult, and really powerful to watch people struggle with how best to respond to an authoritarian government that has decided to crush you regardless. And then all of these wonderful people trying to figure out the best way back. Right. And I think that's the best way to push back. And it's such an important thing in Star Wars. And part of where my sort of obsession with Justice for the Jedi comes in is the Sith, the authoritarians, the bad guys, they don't need to wrestle with the choices. They just destroy anything in their path. And people with hearts, with connection, with empathy, with identity, with hope, twist themselves into pretzels trying to figure out what's the right way to push back. And I thought the portrait of the Gorman trying to figure out in this impossible situation what's the right way to push back was also painfully real, but good to see, because it reminds us that we're not alone when we're trying to figure out best way to push back.
And one of my favorite moments as we start to transition to that was the first conversation with Andor and Williman, and when Will saying, "You act like Luthen's the enemy," and Andor saying that would be easier. That to be speaks to what you're talking about, right? Like he's not, and that's why it's all complicated.
Well, let's dive into some favorite moments. Jen, what did you have on your list of favorite moments?
Well, I want to go back to the Gorman Massacre. Are we going to discuss it more, or should I bring it up now?
We can go freestyle. We have our little bullet points, but it's fine.
Okay. I'll just say this quickly about the Gorman Massacre. I thought it was really brilliant that they used French people. They cast French actors. They made the language modeled after French. I think for the historical perspective of it, right? But I also think that it's important because I was like, if they were to have cast brown actors, like how would that have changed things? I think it's really important that we had a bunch of white actors, and it's going to reach a wider audience. Is going to be more impactful for that audience to be able to, kind of, it's horrible. It's horrible that I have to say this, but they'll relate to it they'll see more of the humanity of these characters, which is a horrible thing to say, but it's the truth. And so I thought that was really, really well done. I thought that the fact that they burst out into their song was so beautiful and so real. I was a little annoyed by the chant that it kept going on, because if you've ever been to a protest, you switch up the chant. Somebody will come in and you at least do like 3 different chants.
cadences.
So the fact that they kept repeating it, right?
I just kept thinking about that sound mixer going like, thank you for keeping it only one chant in one song, because that bleep is hard to blend in.
I know. And exactly. And they talked about the sound mixing in this behind the scenes episode of the episode, right? Which is like building in like how the song builds, right? You first starts out with these lone voices and then more and more and more. It was done really well done. Anyway, so that's the Gorman Massacre. Is my
on that point, Jen, too. I think it's a harsh reality. It is. I often think of part of Heath Ledger's Joker speech of like, soldiers die in a foreign country, that you don't question it. That's what happens. It's just the way of it. And when we even think of what's going on, trying to get people's attention in Gaza or the West Bank, versus, look, I'm wearing a Ukraine hat. This is my Ukraine Trident hat. That's a lot easier sell, and I think it's tremendously important. And I am Ukraine. I got Ukraine blood in me, so that's why it's important for me. But it's an easier story to digest. Because it seems, even though there's a long history of this, even beyond 2014 and Crimea and everything, but it's a long history of it. But like, you talk to someone on the street at a coffee shop or your family member, what's going on in Gaza is just, you're talking about 3,000 years of that, whatever. And I think to your point, whether intentional or not, obviously the connections to the French Revolution, and Tony had said that's the easiest thing for people to grasp. And he wasn't being insulting. He's just, you think of the French people and protesting, hell, I spent 3 days in Paris and those protests were going on and it kind of looked like this. I passed 300 officers staging, smoking cigarettes. When do we go fight? It just was, that's what they did. It was Tuesday. But I do think the effect, whether super intentional or not, Jen, I do hope it has some kind of effect where it's a little reflective to get more understanding.
Yes.
I don't know. We'll see.
It feels very intentional to me to connect it to Ferrex. There's the literal, skin color, but Ferrex is also there's such a class thing going on with it. And the Empire doesn't care about that. The Empire just wants what's on that planet. And if Calkite was on Ferrex, they'd be doing this on Ferrex. But for the Luthen part of it, it really matters because Ferrex is so coded as working class. But with just as rich of a culture and community and tradition, but a lot more diversity on the planet. And then Gorman is high class.
Right. Ooh, very good point.
Part of, and that's why Luthen wants it to burn. A rich, important planet.
Right.
A European planet.
Right.
Burning would be more valuable to me to the rebellion than 3 more Ferrexes.
Yep.
I think it's really on purpose.
Yep. And even the setting up from going back to the travel log video at the beginning of this season, and I think you're absolutely right, and it absolutely plays that way, right? Again, you hear what's going on in Sudan, you think, whether right or not, you think, well, yeah, that's what happens there. Does it happen in London? You think, London? The Beatles? No, this can't happen there. It's true.
Ferrex deals in scrap, and Gorman makes their artisans. There's lots.
We have a nice
contrast, which I think is so brought out by Willman in Andor, reminding us where they came from and their culture. Yeah. Ferrex, stone and sky.
I love. I again, whether super intentional or not, we love digging in. But the fact that the 2 big locations on Ferrex and Gorman are hotels, and one is you got $36 you can stick up here, and one is, sir, would you like your water when you check in? Like, interesting.
Had a nice bar with some Ovicians having nice cocktails in it. That was lovely. All right.
That's great.
Some more, any favorite moments from you, Ken? Specific moments? And
all of it. No, everything. I did highlight the Andor Will reconnection. I do have some questions about what Will's been doing the last year. Last time we see him, he's huffing paint with Saw.
Yeah.
Now he's back with Luthen, and hey, we'll get a Willman spinoff. I would watch him. He's a fascinating character. But I love that whole conversation. Do you want to fight or do you want to win? Which sets up what we're going into these episodes, and it's complex. I don't want to say up top, 35 minutes in, but any conversation I have around the Gorman and any kind of where I'm like, I don't know if I would have done that, is not to say that anything was done wrong or that they shouldn't have or that should have stayed silent or that Bale kind of sticking around. Like, these episodes are about that question of, do you want to fight or do you want to win? And we keep wrestling with that all through Andor, and the complication is the point, and to what you're saying earlier. So I love that opening there. I love little moments with them too, of Andor and Will flying in low in the U-wing heading to Gorman. Fun little Star Wars things in this fun romp of an arc. I do want to highlight. I called it the Force Reiki scene. Force and the Reiki, having been with someone who's a trained Reiki person, it's so similar to hear someone describe Reiki and the Force. I just loved everything about it too, what you all said, echoing that, but the conversation too with Bix and Cassian and him having this thing pressed upon him of like, you are running around acting like it's quote all good, and everyone knows it's not true, and just him wrestling with his purpose, wrestling with the clarity, but it's a life lesson buried in this highly political real world arc here of this idea of all that you've gathered, all that you've been feeling, and these people that they gather as they go. There's a purpose to it. We know what Cassian's end is. We know the great purpose to it. So there's all that in terms of canon and the character. But I thought it was a very valuable moment just in terms of Star Wars philosophy and Star Wars counseling with respect to your great show we used to have here. And that, not that the show lacked this, because it had a ton of heart, but to your point earlier, Joseph, it did kind of ignore the Force. But that's also Cassian when we meet him. I think they're drawn from that. When he doesn't like Baze Malbus or Donnie Yen's character shared that way. He's got, it was always like, well, he might have been a separatist. He might have not liked the Jedi, but I like tying it back in that way. But I thought it was a real valuable scene, and I'm glad you both loved it too.
Mm-hmm. I think part of, we've talked on one of our Andor reports early on of, I was kind of okay with the Force being missing from the show because it's missing from these people's lives. It's missing from the galaxy. More common knowledge of it is missing. And so I loved, just deeply moved by the actual Force healer scene, but the setup of it that is more like the Reiki real world conversations, or like somebody's going to rub a crystal near my shoulder, and that truth that Marva encountered a scam artist once 10 years ago and is like, yeah, Force healers are BS because I saw a crackpot once. And that's Andor's reason. That dialogue was so great, and it brings the beating heart of Star Wars, that mysticism, that spirituality, that hope, that connection, into the Andor world in such a believable way, where he's got these very believable real world, like, a chiropractor hurt my best friend once. They're all quacks. Like, well, maybe some of them, but not.
Marva went down to Venice Beach or Niamos and saw someone down there for $5. Yeah, and again, this is not a super intentional connection, but it's part of the Star Wars tapestry. Having just rewatched Rise of Skywalker at the Academy Museum and being moved by that movie again with the heart and the spirit of that movie, despite as big and wild as that movie is, this is a little bit of that. I have a feeling. And you act on these feelings, and where does that feeling come from, and all those kind of things. But Cassian kind of running away from that. To me, it was more than, especially in the end, more than just running away from the rebellion. That's the surface. That's the job title. It's running away from maybe a path that you need to be on. And it was just fascinating to start it with this cook turned Force healer, who clearly is an Order 66 survivor. She's probably killed Inquisitor. I'm kidding.
Barasoff in a mask. No, that's what I loved about it, is like Star Wars has been doing a very, very good job in live action storytelling, but in publishing for years now, of saying there's degrees to which people connect. And this is clearly somebody who connects at a certain level. Right. So it's beautiful. Yeah. Anyway, a couple specific moments from me. I really like Dedra's sudden, somewhat public kiss of Cyril. Like, clearly everybody there knows they're kind of together, and this guy comes around and sees the boss, but it didn't feel that desperate kiss was powerful to set up where they were going. There were some cool Star Wars shots before the Gorman Massacre that had a great tension to me, because they were normally the kind of shots that would just be cool, but you knew a massacre was coming. The stormtroopers marching down the stairs on Gore was just one of those kind of like, that's a classic cool Star Wars shot, but sometimes the stormtroopers' horror is implied or a little bit off screen, and it's not going to be this time. So there was a great tension to that, being like, that would be the poster from another Star Wars, but in this Star Wars, we're going to see them brutally assassinate a civilization. So I thought it was like one of those cool shots, and like, I feel weird about it being a cool shot, but that's good.
It's one of those moments, if I may jump in, like, it's similar to, even though it didn't end up in Rogue One in the finished picture, but like the stormtroopers marching on Scarif through the ocean, right, the water, beautiful shot, trailer shot, poster shot. It's like the TIE Fighter last season, and I do think Andor, the series, deserves credit for taking things we are so used to and reapplying the actual meaning to them, right? I mean, they're stormtroopers. They were called that in 77 when we first saw them. That's a pretty direct connection to history. And I think that's okay. And it's okay to say that as a Star Wars fan. Like, I collect Star Wars. I collect Darth Vader, collect stormtrooper figures. I love biker scouts. But this show just did slow down to remind you of the meaning behind it, and that's a good thing.
One other just like very specific moment I wanted to pull out, because I just thought it was a beautiful visual, when Mothma has her conversation with Bail before she's giving her speech. You got all the hustle and bustle of the Senate, and everybody clears out from behind her for just one beat, so she's alone in that hallway. And it's just such a great, just visual storytelling to make us feel what she's feeling. She is surrounded by people, but she is also alone in what she is about to do. I thought that was a great little moment. Just a great bit of over-the-top dialogue I liked is that, I believe it was Senator Nico, one of the people just repeating, barfing up Palpatine propaganda. It says, the tragic broth we've been sipping this morning has been brewing in plain sight.
I love that.
Good tortured metaphor, Senator Nico.
It was like, slow down, sir. Slow down.
Come on. And then I love the Enforcer droids as horror monsters. From the turn to look at Cyril, to the marching down the streets and the killing spree, to the like Frankenstein-like rebirth of K2SO. I thought the Enforcers were depicted in a very sort of universal horror movie monster way, which I thought was fantastic.
Love that.
Jennifer, any other little isolated moments, or should we dive into the big picture?
I will say, agree with you with the K2SO droids, the Enforcer droids. I thought that whole sequence with the massacre was very real. And I don't even remember if there was music or if it just was like supposed to be like the natural sounds, which is really what made it feel more like a documentary. And then it was the reminder that we're in Star Wars when those droids came out. I was like, oh, that's right. It kind of like helped me, like, because I was getting really emotional watching that. I'm like, this is horrible. We need to see the seriousness of this situation. But when they came in, it kind of like put some distance between our real world and this is Star Wars. This is a galaxy far, far away. I needed that. And the last thing I'll say is the Mon Mothma, her Senate, was it the box, whatever that thing is called?
The pod? Yeah.
The pod. And there's, again, no music, and it's just quiet of her slowly moving forward, that tension building when she's about to make this huge speech. It just was really, I love that. I love that this show takes its time with these kinds of things.
Yeah, that was great storytelling, and it retreating. I think when the pod slowly goes back, you're thinking not only about her danger, but you're thinking about her sacrifice. And I love that they included in her speech not just all the firebrand stuff, but the truth of, I don't know any other world than this, and I used to be so proud of it, and it's retreating like this pod. It was fantastic. A lot of visual storytelling as well.
A couple moments. On a funny moment, let's add to Partagaz's great list of lines with "You seem animated" is one of my favorite things. I loved every. I had thoughts too of when Mothma's there in that pod doing this, I thought of Padme. I thought of Padme speaking. I thought of everything that's gone before there in those hallowed grounds. One final thing. It's just a great detail, but maybe not tied to much of the themes as much as my other favorite moments. But the ending, Jen, you have an interesting point about the droids come out. It's not a shift in tone for me, but we do kind of switch into action. This droid's chasing Andor in the back of your head. You're like, oh, that's K2SO, and boom, and all the things that happened. It did get us out of the episode a little bit lighter, if that makes sense to your point.
Yes, agreed.
But one of the most effective things that entire episode that's horrific to watch if you're clued into it. I love the use of I forget her name, Dina. She's Palmo 1. And the use of the audio of help. Can anyone help us? Like, it actually gets me emotional. Like, such use. And that does have kind of a documentary feel to it. And using it over other things. You see her a little bit. But just hearing this broadcast, hearing this horror, it was really effective. And one of my favorite moments in this entire show.
Yeah, it was a great balancing act of the pulp of the Enforcers just hurling people, but still, like, there's that shot of one of the characters we met, landing and eyes blank, and it's incredibly effective. All right, let's dive into the big themes and ideas. There's so many things to discuss. For myself, I'll just throw out this big picture, and then we can kind of go where we need to go. I feel like the episode, this arc, followed up on a lot of the themes that have been going on, and dialed into some with more precision. But I thought what was really focusing on is the how do we fight? Are we fighting to help people who truly need help? Are we fighting for vengeance? And then on the other side of that, lots of reminders of what are we fighting for? Why are we battling? Like, we can list the policies of the Emperor and his lack of truth, great, but what is being lost, and what do we want that we don't have? And I think it was again highlighted the connection, community, truth, trust in particular. And then I think the thing that was really different in this arc, that this arc spent a lot of time on the idea of not only are those big community things we've lost, as individuals, we have lost personal agency. So much of Cassian's journey is so many quotes from him about, I'm going to choose now. You don't choose for me. I want to choose. And I think for me, that was part of what was so powerful about that whole Force healer thing, and Cassian being told that something that he maybe feels is that maybe he does have some path he's on that he can't leave. And I feel like some of his fear of that, it's the practical of, I don't want to die. I want to live the rest of my life with Bix. But I think it's adding on to, in his attempt to help people, he is losing all personal agency, even being a part of the rebellion. Now he can't leave without Draven's permission and filling out, 8 TPS reports like he's in Office Space. And then on top of that, to be told, and you have this grand purpose, and you're locked in by this grand purpose, and you can't get in. So I thought all these great ideas that have been there for a long time, but also this really highlighting this new idea of personal agency, or elevating this idea that's been there of personal agency, and tying that to the whole, instead of just kind of a clunky canon thing of how does Cassian end up where he does, to make it that, like, hey, it's not just us, the audience, who saw Rogue One, so we know. It's a really elegant way to make Cassian know, somewhere deep in my soul, I know I have to do Rogue One.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know the name of it. I don't know what'll happen, but it's fun to be on the journey with him, where he feels like I am a part of something bigger, and I kind of can't get off the path I'm on. As I thought was fascinating. So that's where I went for some of the big picture stuff. Jennifer, what are some of your big picture thoughts, or any specific themes you'd like to discuss?
I think piggybacking on that, there is this feeling that there is no going back, There
Mhm.
is no going back to the life that you had. And there is no safe place in the galaxy. You know, when Cassian's telling Bix, we'll go to someplace safe, we'll go somewhere remote. The Empire is
I always want to
everywhere.
yell,
Like,
Cassian, Niamos, do you remember?
exactly,
But
right?
maybe he's been hearing rumors of. I feel so bad. I'm forgetting the beautiful island that the Bad Batch retires on.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. But
Yeah. So
I
like,
think that,
does Cassian know about that? Because yeah.
Sorry, Jen. Sorry, Jen.
right. It's like, no, it's this false hope and believing that the clinging to the past, and that they're all past that point, and they are all on this new trajectory where they have to choose whether you're Cassian, whether you're Dedra, whether you're Mothma. It is moving forward, and what are you going to do about it? Are you going to go
Mhm.
full throttle? Are you going to take that risk? Are you going to fulfill your destiny? Or are you going to try and run away? And really, there is no running away. So you either are going to die or die for a cause.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was really, really scary if we think about it in our current state of affairs.
Mhm. Yeah.
This,
Yeah. Pabu. I looked it up. It's Pabu.
Pabu, that's it.
Like, yeah, I wish they could go to Pabu, but yeah, but in terms of the theme, I think that's fantastic, Jennifer, and I think that's Cassian and Cyril to me have been these mirrors of their journeys, and can they make different choices? Will they make different choices? They're so locked in, and I think it's fascinating that Cassian feels like I'm tied to this bigger cause, so I can't ignore it. There's nowhere to run to. And Cyril kind of makes this sad little attempt to run to get away from it, but
Mhm.
everybody's caught up in the machinery. And it's we were talking about with Gorman. Could talk about more of like there's this important central debate they're having about how do we fight. Um, is it peaceful non-resistance? Is it checking ourselves that this assassination isn't vengeance but tactical? Is it what's the right way to fight? And all along, we the audience know like there's the Empire is going to attack you no matter what. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
even if you don't take the bait and go to the court, go to that public area, they'll find another way, but they're going to crush you. Really, I think speaks to your elegant point about when the galaxy is in this kind of state. I don't get involved with politics because eventually politics will get involved with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The monster will come for us all.
The monster will come for us all. The monster that screams the loudest.
Mhm.
Clearly, Emperor Palpatine has a popular podcast. Screaming the
That's what it's
loudest.
called. That's what it's called.
Scream the loudest with Emperor
I'm
Palpatine.
just asking questions loudly. Yep.
Unlimited questions. Ken, where do you go with some of the big pictures?
Yeah. My slot machine of themes rolling. Let me hit boom. We got speaking the truth is something that comes up, and the truth's at the center of it. And I'll say this carefully because it sounds cynical. Andor is to me this wonderful masterpiece of a show that is also rudimentary themes 101. Where it just goes, hey, do you not understand themes? Allow us to just put them in front of you constantly. Where other things, including other Star Wars things, are a little more layered. You might have to dig through, sift through some magic to get to it. The word truth shows up in all three episodes many, many times. And we have the great line at the end, the death of truth, it's the ultimate victory of evil. So everyone's got truth hanging over them, and it's this sub-theme of how do you react when you are faced with the truth, like I said earlier, or how do you react when maybe even you're wrong? To me, that's a lot of Dedra and Cyril's stuff, where there's these moments along the way where the focus shifts, and I don't quite know. We don't know where Dedra's going to end up. We know Cyril's fate at this point. I thought it was brutally effective. And also, it was one of my favorite moments, too. The "Who are you?" elicited a Louis Gossett Jr.'s Enemy Mine character laugh from me, where I literally went, he doesn't even know you, dude. Like, he doesn't even know you. But in that is this reaction to the truth. The reaction when your relationship to it is not what you thought it was. So that was big there. We can dive into that. But the final thing, you touched upon it too, Joseph. I think it's very clear and all the way through of this idea, what is resistance and what is enough and what works. And I love the line from the one really French dude. We are the gore. If they take that from us, then what's worth saving? Because I don't even know if I should describe it as damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think Rylance was right, but also, what do you expect? I think the moment the barricades showed up, you should have changed your plans, but also you need to leave or you need to stay. Like everything about it was fascinating and frustrating and haunting. And I put down the note here to myself of the Gorman massacre was effective for many reasons we've already discussed, but it was effective because just the path to the massacre was this cavalcade of choices. Just choices. And Star Wars is about choices, as you're talking about, and wanting to have the choice. And Clea's line of, I thought that's what we were fighting for. Ooh, she's so good. She's so good. Yeah. All leading up to Cassian making the choice to go, no, Jen, you know what? I'm choosing to go with you. Fascinating. It's not a right or wrong. It's just an analysis and an exploration of what is resistance.
Yeah, I think that's part of what I'm so taken with this choice to add this Force healer to give Cassian this sense of purpose that he maybe feels trapped by, tortured by, because Bix believes in it so much that she left. Even a hard-nosed Luthen, that scene with him, I think he's kind of like, he's like, you've been with me all along the way. You've been everywhere you needed to be, and lists all the places you've been. And it feels like even Luthen's like spending some time with his kyber crystal and feeling Cassian's purpose. Yeah. And so much of it is built up to this idea of Cassian feeling trapped by it.
Yeah.
But in this great Star Wars tradition, when people hear the word destiny, they think of like predestination, like you don't have a choice. And the way we always talk about it in Star Wars is life deals you this deck where you're on a path, and you're gonna destiny is gonna force you to come to a place of choice, and then you're gonna have to choose. Luke isn't destined to face the Sith because he's the coolest, baddest, strongest Jedi ever. It's because it's his father, and someday for himself, he is destined to confront his father and on a personal level deal with that. And I think what's so great about Cassian is, I think he feels trapped by this destiny that everybody believes in, by this responsibility. But we know his destiny is to start making choices of his personal agency entirely for himself, not shooting Galen and going with Jyn and believing in her. So it's fun to watch the poor man be tortured, but then but you're going to get to where you want to be, of your personal agency restored and it making a difference.
Yeah, no, it's lovely big, and we could probably spend another episode on just the chosen one, not in Star Wars, but just the hero's journey that a lot of this is based on. But I think throughout time, that's why I think we hammer on it so much here at Force Center. It's just this kind of personal podcast belief of it's not just simply pulling the sword from the stone and yay, it's all done. You are constantly faced with choices, and that's why the second act of Scripts, as Sid Field would teach you in his book available for 1995 at the course, is that long, dark tea time of the soul. It's a constant amount of things in front of you that could make you choose to walk away. And I think a lot of the focus in pop culture media for 50 plus years or more, if not 1,000 or whatever, the first story emerged, is that it all starts and ends with pulling that sword from the stone. And what you're talking about, Joseph, is I love hearing you talk about it. I'm just like, no, Cassian's destiny is to continue to make choices. They're there.
To be in the right place at the right time to make
choices.
a good choice. Yeah, I love the theme of truth, because I thought it is a great contrast to the frustration that everybody's having with Luthen. With Vel just straight up saying we're not his puppets anymore. Like the displeasure with Luthen was on full display from Vel and Mothma and Cassian. And so all of these ideas of truth, I think, were painted this great contrast to Luthen really wanting to hold on to the truth. When he wants to give it to you, he wants you to believe him, but he wants to withhold the truth all the time, which is fascinating to me.
That Erskine conversation when he reveals it to Mothma is one of my favorite of the show. I really is, because of what we're talking about.
It's obscene. Yeah. The Mothma saying is so.
Oh, I get it. I'm only supposed to trust you. And this time, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right now, yeah, definitely.
yeah. And Luthen kind of spreading that, where Cassian and Bix are so happy to see Wilman home, and Wilman's being cagey about what he's been doing because he's been doing it for Luthen. And so you see this picture of community and trust, and then Wilman comes in with all of his baggage, which I think he's been going back and forth to Gorman to inflame things for Luthen to get it to burn, and then also starting this beautiful connection. So that's great. I did want to talk a little bit about and get both of your opinions about the Cassian and Cyril connection, because I think there's this power of truth to Cassian is on this journey where he is imbued with purpose. He has dominated Cyril's mind and Cyril's journey, and then when Cyril confronts him, like you were saying, Ken, Cassian doesn't even remember who he was. Like, I pointed a blaster at the back of your head once, like 5 years ago. Like, you're not been through more important things.
Do we do improv together? What are you talking about? Who are you?
Yeah. The "Who are you" moment was brutal because it called into stark relief that the different path that these characters are on. That Cyril, in my estimation, was starting to make better choices. Right, realizing the people on Gorman are beautiful, and I actually like my spider display, and more complications with his relationship with Dedra. But even with the "Who are you," I feel like the Cyril of old that would have enraged him. But for just a moment, he starts to lower the blaster before he is murdered in a way that's about a vengeance issue for the elder Rylance. But for the serial Cassian mirror journey, Cassian has been imbued with even more purpose and must go on. And Cyril dies pointlessly, accomplishing nothing in a brutal, sad, perfunctory way. Jen, how did you feel about not Cyril's death, but Cyril's journey in general? What spoke to you there?
I thought that Kyle Solar's performance was brilliant. I think he should not be nominated for an Emmy and he should win it because we see this truth that he has clung to. Now suddenly the real truth is revealing itself layer by layer. And we are getting all of those realizations. And something that Dan Gilroy said that was really interesting was he says that Cyril has an emotional need. He wants Dedra and the Empire to like pat him on the head, and he wants approval of his mom, Edie. He doesn't have a philosophical alignment with the Empire per se. He wants to do what he's told, and he believes that they were working on something that they were not actually working on. But it really is more about like his own insecurities that he's kind of aligned himself with the Empire. And then to have that moment, his whole life, all these things that he's done, and the guy doesn't even know him. It's so pathetic, and it's just one more realization heaped on this pile of just like despair. And it just was like, this poor guy, right? Like, I'm not poor guy of all the atrocities he's done, but it's just like, even in that last moment, your mark doesn't even know you. That's how useless and pathetic you are. What a perfect end to that character. I was so glad because I was like, how are they going to kill Cyril? He's got to die in some way. I thought it was brilliant.
And I should just quick footnote: the actual filmmaking of that fight was fantastic. Just
the choreography,
visceral and real, and not just cool punches, but you felt the pain and the danger of those two men. I think those quotes from Gilroy are fantastic. I think if he does care about anything, it isn't a philosophy, but it is that idea of outside agitators, right? Like, he was on to something with Andor in the first season and his connection to Luthen and to something bigger. And this idea of outside agitators, if he believes in anything, he at least believed in the idea of, well, what I'm doing on Gorman is worthwhile because we're looking for those outside agitators like that Andor. So I feel like him seeing Andor is like, this is what I thought we were doing, is looking for a guy like this.
That they're criminals. That these people are criminals, they're rapists, they're murderers, or whatever they are. He has absorbed that propaganda. He's wanted to believe that propaganda to justify why he's doing these things. And so then when he realizes, these people aren't outside agitators. They're actually kind people who are probably the most real with him out of everyone, including Dedra that he discovers, who's been lying to him. These were the real people, and that sense of just realization was just so fantastic when he finally realized.
It reminds me of a painful reality in real life where I will encounter people who in my life, not lately, because I try to guard my life, but people who are like say awful things about a person of a different color, and then they'll talk about their buddy and like, how do you do that in the same sentence? Like, well, because this person's my neighbor and I know them, and like there's that horrible human. I can believe awful things about a group of people as an idea, but when I come face to face to the human, somehow that melts away a little bit. And I thought, yeah, Cyril was definitely doing that with the people on Gorman. But I just felt like if he has anything that animates him politically, it's the idea of, okay, it's not the Gorman's fault, so it must be an outside agitator, like that Andor who lost me my job. So the fact that he could see that outside agitator in front of him, that Andor, that man who caused him so much pain and shame, and doubt even his beliefs in him, in that Andor should be hated. It's like Cyril came so far in like a few seconds before he died that blaster lowering, like why would he lower that blaster unless he also went like, for 5 years I've been at least partially animated by hating this guy, this outside agitator who ruined my life, and I've been so lied to that I'll even question if I should hate him.
I thought it was it was more of a reaction of, are you effing kidding me? Like, it was almost like disbelief rather than any sort of humanity. I felt like it was him just like being like, what have I been doing with my life if this person I've been chasing doesn't even know me? Like,
and maybe it is more personal, but I definitely feel like it's a lowering of the blaster. Like what I expect out of that character is for him to start foaming at the mouth and shoot him 8 times immediately at the pain in the disgrace of being forgotten. And I'm just fascinated by the fact that it isn't anger, it's a dissipating of energy from him right before he gets shot. The blaster literally comes down, and I'm just sharing my own opinion of the why of that. But I think I just love that the creators put in that moment of melting, of slight disengagement from Cyril, because he could have just stayed steady, and it could have been a question of, we don't know what he's going to do next, and he gets shot in the head. But there's that moment where he lowers. Ken, what did you make of some of Cyril's
I'll settle this debate. I'm kind of right in the middle. I think it's all present. It's fascinating. First of all, yeah, Kyle Soller in a show that is full of vanguard acting performances. Give all the Golden Razzie. No, that's the crappy ones. The Golden Globes. Kyle Soller might be my favorite in the entire series, and he's not even in there all the time. Like sometimes we lose him a little bit at the end of season 1. I thought he comes and goes a little, but to track it to the beginning. Season 1, episodes 1, 2, and 3, they are truly connected. You keep saying, Joseph, the mirrors, reflections of each other. I think that's very true. And to track it and to see things, from his point of view, he's doing his job. I'm doing my job, but he's not connected to the people, right? That's a lot of the banging of the pots and the sounds and the clanking of episode 2 and 3 of going on the ground. That's step 1 of the truths in front of you. What are you going to do to it? And it just trails and trails and trails until we get this moment. I do think absolutely this season plays with the redemption of Cyril Karn, right? From the moment we see him and he's saying things, we're like, oh, is he getting it? Is he on Gorman seeing it? But no, it's for this, this search of purpose, Jen, right? This search of purpose. His entire life has been no purpose. His mom is his mom. He gives that speech in front of the Prelox Morlona guys, and it's like everyone has clap for the guy, clap for the guy. Everyone, please clap. He's been searching for this. This is the greatest moment of my life with Partagaz and Didra, and they're playing him like a violin or a space violin. He has no purpose, and I think he thought he's had purpose, and it's wrapped up in Cassian Andor. So I think in that final moment. He's connected a little bit. I don't know what's going on with him and Rylance's daughter. He's got a connection going there. You mentioned the spiders, Joseph. Excellent take of seeing that. I think there is this moment of clarity as he looks around at the horror as he's been lied. I could have done without him choking Didra. I just don't like when characters do that. Male characters do that nowadays. I think it allows too many things to happen. But he has a psychological break in that scene. That's what I will say. Because that purpose has been lied to. And I think in that moment for me, and I'll end my little Cyril speech here, he looks around and gets the truth. And you have that did Cyril get it? does Cyril get it? But then he sees Cassian, and like you're saying, this was my purpose. This is why I made my officers put down their blue noodles. This is why I told them all to do what's right. Getting him was what's right, and that's why I'm here. And then he goes that he has this. He could have stepped into clarity. He could have dealt with the truth in a different way, but he focuses that pointless rage on Cassian, tries to destroy him. And in that moment, I do think what the great "who are you" moment, the energy dissipates is a great way to look at it. I think all that's comes rushing in, and then it's just this like, I think to Jen's point, there's a little bit of, I took it as none of this mattered then. None of this mattered. Yeah. And he's dead. And he's dead because of the way he treated someone. He's dead because of what he did. He's dead because all this might have started with him anyways. And it was haunting in the most beautiful ways and tragic. And jumping, I loved the end with Edie. I love that end.
Oh,
I love that end.
So there's good. A beautiful ambiguity to me too. There, like, well, obviously, even though I think she's monstrous because she's a little too close to home for me. I won't say that for everyone. I'm saying my own personal take. She's monstrous, but how much sincere pain is she going to have, and how much is she going to, in a monstrous way, dine out on? Yeah. My son is now a star on the Gorman Memorial that's going to go up in, that was beautifully dark.
It was.
Yeah, and I think the mirror thing with them really came into focus as well. Of Cassian is ending up with. They're both trying to be spies for both sides, and Cassian ends up with this glorious purpose, and Cyril ends up with glorious no purpose, being used and thrown away even by the woman he loves. Brutal
He's
stuff.
A stat.
He is a stat. The only other thing that I want to talk about in terms of like the truth, I liked it from Cyril, and I liked it from Mothma too, of seeing two characters who haven't been as directly around horrific sudden violence being affected by the truth of it. Cyril wandering around in a daze as all these people die around him, and then Mothma almost going into shock when Cassian is rescuing her and just killing people. I thought that was powerful to see a couple characters wrestle with the truth of violence and the reality of it.
Yeah. Oh, great. Again, we use these great and love around this horrible massacre. I acknowledge that, but I love some of those moments of, hiding behind a pillar with a blaster, scared shitless, but knowing you're in it, it's happening, and you're going to scream, you're going to die, you're going to do it. It's just the reality of what a lot of these calls to action are, right? It was, again, I keep using the word hunting because that's my word of the day, because it was.
Mm-hmm. It is a good word. It's a good word. I'd love to talk a little bit about the theme that was running through these episodes too, about people being attached to the cause versus what they need or want personally. This second season has been so laser focused on people's relationships and often romantic relationships. And I think this arc focused on relationships as well, but also, some of that. What do I want? What do I need? We got Cassian and Bix's connection on Yavin, which is just so beautiful. Cassian wanting to choose specifically the personal. It's not like he wants to run away or doesn't believe in it. He's just like, I just want this life with you. And Bix kind of making him choose the rebellion. There's that line when the Force Healer kind of convinces him he has a destiny. Even the Force Healer says, maybe it's with you. And I think that's a great way to set up like Cassian's choice of like, I know I have a purpose. Is it some grand thing for the rebellion, or is it to just run away and be happy and have a beautiful life with Bix? Cyril and Dedra, we can talk more about how I think that's part of what breaks Cyril is being used, but it's the atrocity in his attachment to the Gorman. But I think what really breaks him is that Dedra lied to him, that she used him as a tool, and that what the personal for him didn't end up being real the way it gets to be for Cassian. I think it's there with the addition of Willman having a relationship, because Willman's story could have just been, I've been radicalized by Saw and Luthen, and I'm just there to stir shit up, but I'm also there and won't leave. The reason he won't leave Gorman is for love, for the personal, not for the cause.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then his love is like, no, get on the radio and help with the cause. And I think within that, within all these ideas of the personal and the cause, you also have, to me, the picture of what's happening on Yavin, of everybody having to start to be a military and follow some rules and give up a little bit of personal agency, but get to know each other, become a family, have trust, have connection, have dinners together. All the things that they were kind of denied by the way that Luthen had been running them in the rebellion. So those are a couple of my thoughts on the tension between the personal and the fighting for the big picture cause. Ken, do you have any thoughts on that general thematic
Yeah, it's
idea?
run through this entire season, and we talked about it sometimes in the real world way, especially here in America. It's again, it was so funny being in Paris those 3 days while those riots were happening and hanging out with two guys at a tattoo parlor, and they were just like, yeah, it's fun it's what we do, and not to take away from anything that was being fought over there, but like over here, do you want to go to a Tesla takedown protest, or do you want to have a nice Saturday afternoon? 99% of the time, we know what you're going to choose, right? And that's kind of what we all face. And this show is like, do you want this? There's a cost to it. I love the Vel scene. You mentioned it a couple times now. The we're not Luthen's puppets anymore is great to the story and Vel story. But I love we're building an army now. And I looked at this is the needs of the rebellion. A little discipline, is that too much to ask for what we're doing? If this is going to happen, we got Bix saying, several times this season, I think in the previous, grabbing from the previous episodes of like, I want to win. We got do you want to fight or do you want to win? I liked Vel. It was one of the key scenes to me of the rebellion, of Yavin. And I love the invite. He was talking about even the canon connection of that too. But this is the true needs at this point. And Cassian wanting to go out for a weekend trip, she probably knows he's doing something important, and she's doing it for Luthen. He's doing it for Luthen. But isn't it at this point fair to ask him to jump all in? And that includes maybe leaving what's here with all of you. We've all given up so much. We know what Vel has lost now at this point. I love that scene in terms of what you're talking about. Just what is the cost? What is the cost? Vel's aware. She's lost a lot, but she's still here.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really powerful. And I love the exchange between Cassian and Clea as well. And I'm scrolling through my notes for exactly what it is, but Cassian basically saying like, I want to make my own choices, and her saying, isn't that what we're fighting for? And that there's that great picture of it is like the Tesla takedown protests, or it is sacrifices, the clear word that I've been hearing a lot of people use for it. Mothma sacrifices, Cassian sacrifices, but that idea of like in order for the rebellion to become successful, it has to have all these rules, and that's giving up some personal agency for the idea of eventually we'll give the galaxy much more agency. Right. I thought was fascinating. Jennifer, what are some of your thoughts on any of the relationships or the sacrifices for the cause?
The relationships drive this whole show. And so it's like, the relationships are the reason why they're going to become successful as a rebellion, but they also recognize that these relationships are going to have to be sacrificed. And writer Dan Gilroy said something interesting about Bix's choice to leave Cassian. And he said that when Cassian says, you're the most important thing or something, whatever, the paraphrasing, she doesn't believe him. She knows he really, based on his choices, he really does. He wants to be part of the rebellion, the greater good, like that really is kind of driving his actions. And so it's because she does not believe him that she knows, then she sacrifices basically their relationship for both of them, for the greater good. And that's really what this comes down to, as we talked about. Like, there is no going back. There is, like having this happy little, like you're saying, happy little Saturday, enjoying the beach or whatever, when this looming fascism is about to take over our country. It's like, you can ignore it until you can't. And then, as we said, the monster will come for us all. So they're all having to make those sacrifices.
And it's a great balance between having to make those sacrifices and this idea of, well, but what are we fighting for? And we need some reminder of that, because this is so hard. This is so brutal. Clea's great mocking speech of like, "Oh, are you tired?"
Like, that's so good.
Like,
you must be so tired.
You must be so tired, so brutal. But like, I feel like that's maybe, I describe this arc as brutal with a sense of hope. I just kind of felt like I felt Vel, I'm sure destroyed that Cinta's gone, but happier being there, being organized, being with other people. The all of the there's, I love the implication that Bix and Cassian have been on again, off again since they were 10 years old, and they're finally here. And this joy matters. He couldn't do the good things that he's doing if he didn't have this joy, this thing that he was fighting for. I think it really ties to the scene with the gore that you were quoting, Ken, about they're fighting about, like, how are we gonna prosecute this fight? Are we gonna go all in, angry, vengeful? Are we gonna go in and just have a peaceful sit in? And the Gore Elder, whose name I don't haven't looked up, just reaffirms it of like we just can't lose ourselves, because that's what we're fighting for. We are the Gore. I thought that was a beautiful way to sort of accent some of these ideas of, even if we don't know the right way to do it, let's just not lose ourselves. Really powerful.
I agree with that. Yeah, wonderful.
Jennifer, do you have more thoughts on the Cyril Dedra relationship? And Ken mentioned being challenged by the violence of that scene. Do you have any thoughts about their tragic relationship?
I have questions and concerns. That's coming in the next section.
Okay, we can put a pin in it if you'd like.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Let's put a pin in that. Ken, do you have any other thematic stuff that you wanted to highlight?
I think that's I think all the big stuff is there for me, and there's we could go in and out of all of it, but just all coming back to the death of truth, which is not just about news and politicians and what's going on, but the truth of your involvement in it, the truth of your relationship with it, the truth of your relationships. Like, it just constantly was at stake, and what people were fighting for in a lot of ways, along with the choices. So loved it, wonderful. Obviously, this show's great. I said earlier, it serves up the themes in a direct way. I really do think it is. I think this is the least subtle of shows, which is why it's getting a lot of credit for the wonderful things and important things it's doing. But I also think it drills down so wonderfully, like the Empire looking for resources for their simple energy initiative. Goes deep.
Yep. Final thing I wanted to say is I think there's also this it's woven into everything else, but this great idea of vengeance, of we see characters who are just sort of trapped by the battle, trapped by the machinery of the Empire, but then we see a lot of people who do have a choice about how they prosecute the fight. It's the first scene in the arc, really, of Cassian and Wilman indicating to us that they've had this fight before. We're like, we found Dedra. I know you're going to say vengeance. Lets us know that Cassian has been like, you know what? We can't just kill people to make ourselves feel better. That's not going to be great for who we want to be. I think we see it with Mothma, where the Erskine thing is so powerful because it's not just Luthen being hard and Mothma being soft. It's Luthen taking away her agency, saying, I'm going to take your assistant, make him my assistant, and without consulting you, the leader, we're going to make choices that you don't even know we've made to keep you safe. How many other take-homes are there? That's what Erskine says, of like, we had to make these choices to make you safe. So I think there's the tragedy of Rylance, who didn't want to have violence be the one who kills Cyril, which adds to the beauty of that. Yeah. So there's a bit of vengeance there. That was the line from the other Gore Elder. They poisoned us. We are the Gore. Yeah. And that idea of, not another counterpoint to Luthen's speech about I'm doomed to become my enemy. Like this guy in Gore saying, no, you're not. So anyway, I just wanted to share some of those thoughts because I think I go harder on Luthen than some people. And I think sometimes Luthen's right. Sometimes Luthen has a point. Sometimes Luthen's a great strategist. But I think, to me, one of the ideas in this show is that Luthen's way doesn't work in the long term, period. And I think this arc really brought it out, in that Luthen's way is based on fear. It's based on control. It's based on isolation. It's based on this sort of doomer attitude. That great conversation with Cassian is like, well, we're both going to hang it at the end of this. That's just how this is going to end. And Cassian going, I'll decide how it ends for me, instead of being given the burden of your doomer fear. Like, it's totally like social media when somebody posts something hopeful of like, yeah, I know it's a dark time, but hey, at least this senator did this good action. And then there are like 80 replies of like, we're all effed. Like, I think it's powerful that Luthen's tactics are what we normally in Star Wars philosophy associate with the dark side: fear, control, isolation.
We've been saying, I think, from the early stages, Rogue One is definitely repudiation of his methods, even though we didn't know he existed. They didn't even know he existed. That's what Cassian does when he pulls the scope down.
Going it alone doesn't cut it anymore. Jennifer, any other final thematic thoughts for you?
No, we haven't even gotten to the canon connections. There's so much. There's so much.
Here we are at the old canon connections.
Oh my gosh.
The first thing I wrote down was Beaston in the background. Did you appreciate the blurry little Beaston?
No, I didn't even see him. Which episode?
Didn't
was
even
it?
The first episode,
that's
one of the establishing scenes of Yavin. He's there in the background, unless I was having in a fugue state. But there's a blurry little Beaston.
Blurry little Beaston.
I was falling asleep. It was rough.
I
rough. Tuesday night. Oof. Yeah.
Not at all blurry Gus Tours.
Yes.
From the Force Awakens is there all through that important Force healer scene, and like that was really such a deep scene, so important. In the background, one of the kind of silly bozos of the Force Awakens.
There's been a couple times where I'm like, look, did Neil Scanlon and Michael Kaplan, they just leave all their outfits behind and everyone's just like, grab what you can in the closet? Sometimes I'm like, this looks like Canto Bite. I know it saves money and it's all brilliant work. But the Gus Tours, of course, he's a legend in the ForceCenter world because of the old Databank Brawl episode. But I was like, all right, okay, I guess he's been a long time. He's been serving a long time. There you go.
With us a long time. The other thing I wrote down is the worker at the hotel sharing the quote, "Rebellions are built on hope." Jennifer, how did you feel about that?
No, I was like, oh. It's one of those things where I really, if I had had more time, I would have really deep dive. But it's just in the moment, I was like, all right, I see you. That's how I felt.
So, it wasn't a negative for you of like too on the nose, like a callback, or did you like that it was sort of like a mantra clearly that's been shared across the years to build toward Jin's fateful?
It's within Star Wars DNA from I've got a bad feeling about this, right? Like I put those feelings behind me of any sort of like consistency or repetition. It's Star Wars, it's poetry, it rhymes. So I think that's why I personally didn't have a hard time with it. It's like, all right, see you, Dan, Tony, Bo.
I liked it because like everybody loves to point out in Rogue One that Jin says it in this big powerful moment, but Cassian says it to her as a one-off. And I love the idea that that's a phrase that people say to each other, like a mantra, to keep yourself going. Ken, how did you feel about Rebellions Are Built on Hope?
I really liked it. It made sense. Not a hot take either way. The only, if I may be allowed one grumpy card, is I did see some people praising it in a way that I know they would have attacked it if Dave Filoni did it. So that's a fight for another bar.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I think that's the part of the fight I was thinking about with like, none of it bothered me in Andor, but it feels like in this narrative that maybe Bail would leave, but he can't. So we need to make sense of it. And I think they did a good job of it. But I think in different Star Wars, that is the kind of thing that would come under attack of like, oh, Bail can't leave because it's canon. So they have to come up with a dumb reason that
plot
he stays.
armor.
Yeah. I think is the kind of thing that people might criticize in something that isn't is fantastic and beloved as Andor. It didn't bother me, to be clear. I'm not criticizing it. I just thought it was fascinating that normally free, wild, in the wind doesn't need to worry too much about lore. Andor is having to do some of the things that Star Wars often does.
No, I thought it was very organic in the moment. It was real. It worked. It was powerful. Like it, and as Diego and Tony warned us, I will now think of that line differently when I watch Rogue One.
Oh, is that the line?
Oh, I think there's several
Is that
lines,
the
but it's
thing?
just one of those moments of like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. But I liked it. I really liked it. And I love that
Alright.
guy tossing a grenade.
Yeah, he was
He
cool.
great.
He's awesome. Yeah.
I hope
so
he's
cool.
on Endor.
And then you know who isn't on Endor? Melshi, because he dies on Scarif. How did you feel about the Melshi reveal, Ken?
I loved it. Maybe I really loved that. I thought it was a, dare I even say, cute moment of that be me. But he didn't say that, nor did he sound like that. The only thing, because I have not had a chance.
You think all Irish people are
Yes,
pirates?
I think
Is that
that's
what you're
exactly what I've been saying. I haven't watched any videos. I know Alex put out what is being heralded as his best video, and I'm going to watch it when I have a chance. It's been a really bad week for me. So I haven't watched any Canon Connection videos. I am scraping the bottom of my brain to get the connection with the blaster at Melshi. Does anyone know? Please help me.
No.
Andor. It was Andor's given to him by, I forget. I saw
Okay,
it.
yeah.
Shoot. Yeah, and then the thing on it, it was just serial numbers.
Okay.
The writing on it is just serial.
I obviously disconnected, but okay.
Is it? Yeah, maybe it's an Arcana 5 related. Maybe
I think it is
season 1.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
I know it's there. I just had that moment of like, you know what? I'm not going to even look this up.
I thought that was also one of the things that I enjoyed and had no problem with, but might get criticized in other Star Wars stories, because that was another like, let's move the chess pieces around. We introduced Melshi; he has to be there for Rogue One, so let's make like a thing of it and really underline it. And they underlined it hard for Andor. The Andor is usually pretty subtle in that the peeking out.
No, absolutely.
It's me. Yeah. Known canon character Melshi was not as subtle as they sometimes are. Didn't bother me at all personally.
No, it was part of the energy for the end of these episodes, these heavy episodes. Even what you were talking, Jen, with the KX droids at the end of the massacre, but the end of episode 9, it had a little bit of the A-team is gathering, and we're gonna go. Like, I'm wondering if these next 3 episodes are gonna be a little bit more action packed than we've been used to. Like, it just had that like. The party started, like it, and I liked it, and so I'm there, and I really do love Melshi as a character.
I did have a question about the K2SO thing at the end, of how you both received it. Like, for me, Andor's obviously been through hell and is in torment that Bix left, but so much of the show has also been about the power and the need for connection and not being alone, and that end with K2SO felt like, after putting Cassian through hell again in this arc, like a little balm of he's not going to be entirely alone. Ken, am I wacky?
No,
and finding a little bit of like hope for Cassian, that he still has some connection. Still got a person.
That's the stated point, actually. To be honest, because you've been busy making a film, but that's I'm not this week. Tony Gilroy has said that was very intentional. That Bix gives him the Dear John letter, which is a tough thing for me to take this week. But then the frat party has begun. I think, what did he describe that, Jen? Is like, they're like, that nice house is going to become a frat house. K2's here.
That's funny.
And that, yes, and it is. Absolutely, Joseph. It meant to be that hope that, like, all right, you can move on. You know, you got a great purpose, and I loved it.
Got a buddy.
Yeah, did you feel that way, Jen?
Oh yeah, and that's what Dan said as well. Is that like, okay, so now Bix is out, and so now don't worry, he's got someone else.
Fair trade. It's just a fair trade.
Fair trade.
Bix for K2.
He's got a buddy.
People have pointed out before the way that they call B2 Emo just B, and he calls K2SO just K in Rogue One. And I think that's in the laundry list of what they're talking about, of how you're going to receive Rogue One differently. Is I think in this next arc, we're probably going to see even more emotional connection between Cassian and K, his replacement for B, and feel the death of K2SO even more. I also wrote down just like that the Force is here in Andor. I feel like we've talked about it a lot, but any other thoughts on just the Force now being present in Andor as a canon connection? I don't know how you circle the Force on YouTube, video and
Yeah.
point an arrow to it, but it's here now.
Yeah, no, I think we all kind of in the same spot of loved it, and not saying that it needed to be before, because it exactly what you talked about earlier, like the Force and Jedi aren't exactly present during this time. I imagine this Force healer doesn't go around broadcasting to all of the galaxy, come to the back door of my kitchen and I'll heal you. Like, I imagine it's low key, so it's worked for me so far, but especially at the end, especially for what we're building to, especially for some of the stuff with Guardians of the Wills and Jin and where we're going, like, to George's point, the Force is everywhere. It binds us. It's there. It's a feeling to connect to. So I absolutely loved it.
Jen, any other thoughts on the Force being present in Andor?
I've never aligned myself with Han and the hokey religions thing, but the way that it was presented, the casting choice, all of it, I was like, I don't think I would have been a believer of the Force. I would have been really skeptical, to be perfectly honest, which is really, really funny the way that it was presented, which is good because, Bix wants to believe. And as Dan Gilroy said, Cassian is kind of going, well, yeah, there's been a lot of strange things happening in my life. Maybe, and he said that he needed to check with Diego Luna if he was 100% on board with believing, but it was kind of supposed to be that he's like open to it a little bit.
Yeah, no, I felt that way too, and I think I really liked that light touch that it wasn't about Jedi, and it wasn't about, hey, I was a kid once and I saw Plo Koon do something impossible. It was all much more in that Rise of Skywalker, Finn. Honestly, going back to Leia and Empire Strikes Back, that feeling of the Force as an analogy just for intuition of like, I just feel it in my gut. I feel it in my bones. And I like the way the Force healer is like, it's not just me. It's not, I'm not just giving you a prophecy. It's just like, I feel these things and thank you for letting me feel it. I haven't felt clarity. I haven't felt purpose, and you are radiating them. And I don't even know what it is. Maybe it's your girlfriend, says the Force healer. It makes it so grounded and real. And then and maybe people have a different interpretation, but the way Luthen turns to him and says, yeah, you've been on this very specific path, and lists all the things he's gathered, I thought was really, really powerful, and made it it made me really feel the spirituality of the Force and get away from any of the like power levels or Jedi or getting like none of that. It was just the power of intuition.
Yeah, love that, Mom. Love Luthen going, look at your Wikipedia page. It's full of things you've done.
Yeah. That's, I mean, part of the reason I'm banging on about it is I really felt it that way the first time he said it. And then when I watched it the second time, Luthen seems just a little shook of like, maybe there's something more with you. Anyway, any other canon stuff? Like, I'm not bothering with things like, hey, they mentioned Edu. Like, yeah, great. Any other?
Yeah. Regarding, I was I'll say, going back to K2 stuff, very happy the way it played out. I know there's that dangling participle of the comic, and I would have David, our ForceCenter listener in Discord, corrected me. I've been incorrectly giving Acker and Blacker credit for the Star Wars Andor one shot with K2SO. It's and I don't want to give Ben Blacker any more credit than he takes. So Dwayne Sirazinski is the actual writer of that, and that comic's now at this point completely squashed. So it is what it is. But it wasn't my favorite. So personally. So I really liked that, and I'm happy with the K2S origin we got. But the big thing for me was the. Like a lot of us, I watched Star Wars Rebels right after, and I think it works, and Erskine being there and everything, and the casting of Erskine, and it's pretty damn close. I love that. Mothma. I think there's at one point Mothma says, "Look, I'm going to run out of hair gel. Let me lower my hair, and I got a new style. I'm going to keep it for a few years. Don't worry about it." I think there's some of those little things along the way, and the speeches being different, and Jen, I know you have more on that, but I will say I think it works so well in story what they did. But I had a little bit of, and it's not Gilroy angst or anything, I had a little bit of, wait, are you saying Bale didn't know that he had someone infiltrated? Clearly. Okay. Now you're saying Gold Squadron and Yavin are glory hogs, and they're rewriting the story. And I got defensive for Dodonna and the Ghost Crew in story, not outside the story. But I was a little like, oh, hold on here, Luth and Clea. They're gonna rewrite it. Like I had a fun interaction with it, but I think overall it worked really well, and it makes sense for what's going on in the rebellion this time. They're not cohesive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I want to hear Jen's thoughts. So I'll just share quickly. Like, yes, the Ezra and Hera are watching the hollow of her in the Senate, and the heart of what she's saying is the same, and it's presented differently, and that's fine with me. But what I'm really connected to is, where's Mothma at? Like, and I like the progression from where we saw her at the end of Andor, of like, I did this incredibly frightening thing. I've left my entire life behind. I've been seen up close violence. I know he was an ISB agent, but he's been my driver for 5 years, and I just seen him shot dead. And everything's secretive. They don't want to tell Ezra and Hera what the mission is until they have to, and then they come face to face, and she kind of opens up to Hera a little bit and gives support and encouragement to Ezra. So it feels like this woman fighting for her life, this long escape, but also kind of stepping into the role of like, okay, my old life is gone, and now I'm beginning to fight in this new way. And my speech to the Senate was one thing. My speech to the people of the galaxy to come join us is different. And the only thing that I bumped on was that they talked about taking her to Dantooine, which is like, for me, that's like hand wavy stuff of like layers and layers of security around her. They're not going to tell they're not going to tell Ghost Crew that they're actually going to Yavin, or are they going to Dantooine first and then Yavin? Like, that's fine for me. I don't care. So Jennifer, you did some research on this, right?
So Dan Gilroy confirmed that there were Star Wars people in the room who told them, the writers, that they could not mess with Mon Mothma's speech in Rebels from a canon standpoint. He said that that speech and how accurate it had to be to the Rebels speech was what they spent the most time on, writing and working with the Star Wars people. He said there was no conflict, contrary to maybe what his brother might have said. And he's like, they were willing to make it work however the Star Wars people wanted it to work. They were flexible. This is what Dan is saying. They even talked about recreating the Rebel speech for live action, but they just ended up not doing that. And I think that I think it really works. I too watched the Rebels episode. And what I like about it is that we see Mothma's fear all throughout the episode, right? Where she's terrified of what she is about to do. She's taking all this time. She's trying to prepare. She's seeing the horrors of the violence of the rebellion, really, now, right? I love that. But then by the time that she gets to the Ghost Crew, she, like you're saying, she's kind of like slipped back into her role of leader. She's kind of on this new path, and she is comforting them and being the strength and being that leader that she is meant to be. And I love that we see that kind of shift. She's had some time to process it. I don't have a problem with it, but I think if you love Rebels, then I could see how you might be like, wait a minute, it doesn't quite work.
I'm going to take in that Dan Gilroy interview talked about. It seems wonderful and honest and real and insightful. Tony, we're up and down. I think I still want to get drinks with Tony one day. Like the fact that he was like, Dan asked, do we have to use the effing speech? And they did it in a cartoon. The tone of the interview was, I get it if you're a Star Wars fan in the bubble, in deep and love Rebels as we do. But I'm interested to hear more from Dan. I'm glad you looked that up, Jen.
Yeah, and he talks about like the way he talks about it. I think he even says like animated series, or the host does, and he talks about like the ghost. It's all very like it's just one big story. The way that Dan's talking about it. Now maybe he said that to his brother in private, and his older brother shouldn't have been saying that to a reporter. But yeah, I'd love to get drinks with Tony Gilroy because he would spill the tea.
These insights are great, but they also, for me, there's a tension. For me, I hope that people can pull back from some of these quotes and engage with the episode, engage with Mothma's arc, engage with the emotions, because I think this is some of what has been difficult about the sequels, difficult about Solo. I almost every time I have a conversation with Solo, it's about the behind the scenes. It's about hey, why'd you think those guys got fired? Do you think the movie would be better? Is there footage? And like, can we talk about the art? Like, it. I worry that too much focus on the behind the scenes starts to rob a focus on the art, and the art is what's going to live on, and the art is what's meant to move us. And give me a documentary in 5 years of the Gilroy brothers versus the Star Wars people in the room and what really happened. I'm fascinated by that. I love that. But right after the episodes drop, I want to be connected to the art.
I agree. I agree that especially when it comes to Solo, that's one that ruffles my feathers the most. I just love this image of good old Pablo Hidalgo in a room saying, "Calibrate your enthusiasm on your speech."
Yeah.
I think it's helpful for me personally. I find it helpful to know the intent. What was the intent? I think that's why I found the Dan Gilroy interview much more insightful than perhaps the Tony Gilroy one, right? Because he talks about the process and he talks about the hopes, but at the end of the day, as we've seen with all Star Wars, it's a collaboration. What is the actor going to bring? What is the sound designer going to bring? What is the cinematographer going to bring? The prop design, the set design, it all comes together to create this thing on screen that, like you're saying, we then, does it work? Is it effective? What they're trying to convey? Are we getting that? And I think for me, that's kind of why I respond to that. I'm like, oh yeah, what they wanted to convey, I felt that. And I like having that kind of like guide for me. It's like a cliff notes that I need.
Yeah, I think
and I hear you on that. And I think I have less umbrage to what was the process? What was the conversation like? How we wanted this moment to feel this way. How did we build it with the costume designer and the sound designer? I have less umbrage like about that. It's when the like the for lack of a better term, soap opera elements come in of who's right, Dan or Tony? Did they have a fight in the room or not? That stuff has nothing to do with the art to me. What you're talking about, some of the stuff that Dan Gilroy shared of like, what did we want to do and how did we execute it? That still is connected to the art. Was Tony a dick in the room? I don't know. And I don't care. Did Tony and Dan I used to work with my brother and there were some disagreements. Did they have a fight at home? I don't know. I don't care. It's when it gets into that, like, it's not really at all about the art. It's more almost gossiping about like your friends who had a fight. That's when I think it gets really distracting to the art for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's in this case, I do love a little more of the intent because it will spin out. But I think it also opens up for me how hard this scene was, because you're going to not only something that exists and something that's animated, something made in a different time. And you got Genevieve O'Reilly voicing Mothma in that. She's playing Return of the Jedi Mothma.
Yep.
She's playing a different character almost. And even Genevieve O'Reilly, there's a great clip that's out there. Maybe I don't know if it's declassified on Star Wars YouTube or not, but she's like,
it is
the history of all this stuff with Cassian. And she says, in 2016, I introduced him simply by saying, this is Captain Cassian Andor of Rebel Intelligence. And Genevieve O'Reilly goes, could you imagine how I would have played that now, knowing all I do now? And you can't go back. You can't go back. So for them as writers and producers to try to connect to something that not only exists, but was made at a time when your show did exist, it's still such a Herculean effort that they've done a wonderful job on, even if there's some wires that aren't connecting. They knew what they were doing in the best way possible. So just Tony, it's your choice of words in interviews. Cartoon, effing.
I still say cartoon though. It's terrible. It's terrible. I've had to really change the way animated series, and I have a friend that works in animation, so I don't want to be calling it a cartoon, right? But it's just like how I grew up in the 80s, it's a cartoon.
All of us, and then like I said, my three roommates in the early 2000s were all up at Cal Arts Animation and everything, and I got beaten out of me pretty fast. So right. No, Ken, we don't do cartoons. Well, but your cartoons are great.
I know.
But I mean, it is also just fascinating to me because it is the emotional core of it worked for me.
Yeah, I did.
But they're very different worlds, and I feel like that's the point. Like, I feel like the Rebels who've been spending time with Andor are having a much rougher experience than the Ghost Crew, who has just as much trauma, but they've found family. They've found connection. And so they have more joy in their journey. but it is like, I don't know if you've ever had the experience where like you stay with in a member of your family who's not doing well, and then you go visit a member of your family who is doing well, and it's like, this is all my family.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and that's the story of Star Wars. That's the story of the rebellion.
Yeah.
Like, there is a stylistic tone and shift from gritty Andor to animated series.
I just like that all this stuff's happening in episode 9 of Andor. On another part of the galaxy, Thrawn and Governor Price are interested because they're really clued in on the Moth stuff. So that's existing at the same time. It's all one world.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I just want to see a conversation between Partagas and Thrawn to see who can quietly drawl one another to death.
A draw off.
A drawl off, yeah.
Wonderful.
Any other canon connections?
Just probably a lot more. I just going back to Yavin and all that stuff was fun, and knowing that there's some family family apartments available if you're a rebel on Yavin's great.
Yeah, I love seeing it built out from the temples and the community of it. It's fantastic. All right, let's get on then to questions or concerns. I definitely have one, and I know, Jennifer, that you have some stuff that you want to talk about, so go for it.
I do really. The only thing I bumped up against, well, there were two things. Number one, K2SO's introduction. Did I mention this, that they were originally going to introduce him in a standalone episode where they're on a freighter, and it was going to be K2SO like comes on board and Cassian's trying to get away, and they have this moment. Dan Gilroy actually wrote the episode, but it was too expensive, so Tony was like, they gotta do it a different way, and so then they came up with this idea. I did have a problem with how, like, why would Cassian want to take this broken droid? Like, I understand, like, later on it's clear it could be helpful for the rebellion, but I was like, why now? Why? For me, it felt a little convenient. Which in this show, I've never felt that. That was the only time. And maybe it's because I did know that there was a comic, which I have not read, but I'm like, what does the comic say? Could it have been done better, right? Even though I've never read it, so I can't say that. But it's just like, it's such a big moment, and I don't know if it worked. That was a concern I had.
Yeah. I had a moment of agreement. I had a moment of agreement where I was expecting Williman to turn around and go, no, I'm running. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that Cassian seeing the value of having a droid worked well because he saw what they were capable of. But I also feel like, not only would it have been nicer to have more of a emotional connection, even though we get that at the end, it would have been nice to have that. I think it's just, there was a little bit of a bump in terms of Andor's emotional state of the desperation to leave. I think it was done admirably with asking for one more favor from Wilman was like a little bit moment of family and connection, but it did feel like Andor's ready to leave.
Yeah.
And
I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, and truthfully, I think we could have done with a couple more seasons of this show to really have more time and more of these canon things kind of like shown of how these taking more time with something like this. So, yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with that too, especially for a lot of people who maybe aren't all in on Star Wars, but really like Andor. The jump to we're on Yavin, and I feel like I have more clarity from all the other Star Wars storytelling. But if you kind of just watch Andor, you'd be like, well, who set up Yavin? Is Luthen in charge there? Is Mothma? Who did this?
Do they hate each other?
I think there's some ambiguity there of how these cells came together and who's in charge on Yavin. Yeah. But that would have been detailed. It would have been
it's too much. Yeah, it's too much.
8 episode arc of setting up Yavin if they'd done the 5 years, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. What else you got, Jen?
Ken, I want to ask you what you were struggling with Dedra and that whole sequence, because I got some things too.
For me personally, and look, this season of Andor has done some things that some people might say were needed, and you had a different reaction to the other people. Now I'm talking about the big stuff in episode 3. So it's broken those things. I just Cyril had a psychological break. There's violence in him. We know that. I just, for me, ruffle a little bit of a male character, directly choke a female character, not in terms of the story. I can get it. I just one of those things of like that kind of thing is a backdoor permission path to some of the stuff we dealt with in episode 3. And just outside of Star Wars in a real world sense. I on the flip side, I enjoyed when Luthen kind of grabs Mothma and she's like, "Don't you dare!" Like I like that as the flip side to it.
Yeah.
So it's not a how dare they this that. I don't get ruffled in that sense. It's just like that's personally for me something I could see less of in TV and movies.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think maybe if he had like thrown her up against the wall, it might have been a little bit more, something to show that his capacity for violence. But that was very like, I don't know if I like this. And then we were debating about her clutching her neck in the thing. Technically, she was choked. It just was not a forced choke. So. But I really struggled with Dedra's feelings. I'm still not 100% clear on what she is feeling, just because I know that she believes that the Empire is right, that she kind of struggles with the fact that she's like doesn't have as much power as she thinks that she does, right? She's a political arm, but at the end of the day, she's just the finger, not the trigger. That's something. She realizes that she's part of like this killing machine, but I think maybe what she's wrestling with more is not the atrocities around her, but more her relationship with Cyril. But I don't think that she really cares about Cyril that much. So I kind of was struggling with what was happening with her.
I felt like to me it was a little bit of that that tension in other relationships between sort of the personal and the cause. The way I read Dedra is raised basically by the Empire, and the Empire is just the government, and it's not good or bad. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You go to work, and she's got clearly from what she did to Wilman's father and to Bix, she's got it in her to be aggressive and controlling and torturous and a fascist. But I got the sense that multiple bad things happened to her. She was had control taken away from her, which she doesn't like. She's fought to get this level of power so she can have some control. And she's like, basically like, you don't get to decide how it happens. All you get to do is say when to press go on a genocide. And I think there's a loss of control. I think the way it's depicted, the scale of the violence is too much for her, even for a monstrous torturer that we saw in season 1. I'm not trying to give her a pass on what we saw her do in season 1. But I do think even within horribly damaged people who can be that violent, there's a difference to be like, I personally am under control of torturing these people for this amount of time at my discretion versus this planet that I and my partner have lived on. I don't get to decide. I thought it was fascinating that she used the words they with Cyril. When Cyril demands to know what this has really been about, she doesn't say we, the Empire, need the Calcite. She says they need it. So I think she's losing all these things, and then I think there is just the personal, like, as messed up as they are, I think she really does care about Cyril to whatever level she is capable of. And she really does just want to be like, I had a really bad day at the office, but it's the government and we work for them. And can we just go home and be happy together? And she didn't want to or intend to sacrifice the personal. In it, I think there's this mirror to what's going on with Bix and Cassian having this sort of negotiation about, are we going to sacrifice the personal for the cause? And because the Empire is what it is, just told her you're gonna make your boyfriend a tool and you're going to commit a heinous atrocity. And she loses him. She loses the personal. She loses anything worth fighting for. That scene where she's trying to pull herself together is one of the best scenes.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Her straightening of the coat.
The hand.
It's so raw. It's so good. So amazing. So that, again, who knows? other people might take it a different way, but those are some of the things I was thinking about.
That's helpful.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's again, mirror of Bix and Andor works for me a lot. That's kind of what's going on with we talked about the intimacy, the sex stuff last week. Turn out the lights versus lights on in hand. Yeah, I took Jen. I think it's a great question. I put her in the bucket of your relationship to the truth or learning about the truth. This is someone for me who's also like Cyril, looked for this purpose. Like Joseph, you said Monday through Friday we check in, we do our job. And remember, season 1, we're all rooting for her, right? Well, oddly enough, we're like, this woman in the workplace is she's doing things, and let's get her. I want her to get the credit. And then you have with her former assistant, what's his name, Hurt, earlier series saying, yeah, I don't want credit. That's why I have this job. You're out for credit. And she has that line with Cyril of we will be heroes. It's also a search for purpose. I do think she wants to, as best she understands, she loves Cyril and wants that. I do think you're right. There's a not wanting to give up the personal. I think that's all there. And without a doubt, I think I took it, Jen, as this ain't good. She might be like, this ain't good for me, because Partagas has her, hey, you do this for Krennic and, you get that promotion you want. But there's also the absolute, I took it too early on. She knows what they're doing. Not just with the minerals, but with
she suggests it, right?
Yeah, she's
get them to rise up, and then we'll crush it. But still, like it is like that reality. It's like the same way Cyril sees the same level of violence, and Mothma sees the killing that Cassian has to do to get her to escape. And I feel like there's a lot of characters who are fully confronting the scale and the reality of the violence.
Yeah. I had a small incident one time in my past life where we went to go. I was in charge. I was like, let's go get him. And then we got him, and it was a bad fight. One of my employees got hurt. We almost fell down 4 flights of stairs on a parking garage. And I remember walking back to the office like, yeah, we got him. And I looked and literally have 2 of my employees on the ground clutching injuries. And I remember you have that like, uh-oh, what have we done? And at a larger, more tragic scale is her kind of going, oh, yeah, uh-oh. And her relation to it just implodes. That soul implodes. But it's there's a lot of ways to read it, I think.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people will have strong opinions and thoughts about Dedra, and just sharing ours. And yeah, certainly not trying to let her off the hook. She did a lot of
and Sarah.
nasty things. Fully aware of what she was doing. But that's just a great human that she never wanted this job. That she had a sense that this is not. Yeah. Anyway, my main concern is I would really love to see Perrin in the final arc. I felt like I intellectually and emotionally, I get where Mothma's not walking away from a great relationship, but since we spent a lot of time with Perrin, and I've spent a lot of time thinking, I think we've all spent time discussing, like, what's life like for him when Mothma pulls the ripcord and leaves? Does he get arrested? Does he run to Skulldun? Does her daughter get kicked out of Chandrillan society? Is there a big divorce party that Perrin has to go to? Like, the personal fallout for Mothma, the episode did a great job of reminding us that she's sacrificing the only world and the only life that she ever knew, it being on the Senate. But the personal side of that, of Perrin and her daughter, Perrin in particular, I would just, I hope that there's a little flash of, I would have been happy even if it was like a mirror to Edie watching the news about the massacre in Gorman, if Perrin was just like, if he was out gambling somewhere and the speech comes on and he's like, oh, damn.
I'm with you. I want an animated series, Tales of Perrin. I was like, do we cut to him walking around the empty apartment going with the drink? Mon, has anyone seen Mon? But he's such a fascinating character, performed so well that the character and the performer have earned a reaction to it. And because of the time jumps, which I think they've handled well, I don't think we get a lot of those little tiny little moments, good or bad. So yeah, I'm with you. But being locked up, being arrested, that's realistic. That I maybe we do a cutaway to that next episode.
Sorry, Dan Gilroy said that he actually wrote a scene where Mon goes back to her house, her place, and the curtains are like billowing. It's just like empty. And she has to tell Perrin about what she's going to do and that he's going to have to take care of their daughter and what the stakes are and blah, blah, blah. But I believe it was cut because they didn't have the time or the budget. So here again, if we had been able to have more episodes,
more money,
more seasons,
come on, Uncle
more
Bob.
Money. Yeah, we could have had those kinds of moments because we do care and we do want to know what's going to happen to her daughter and who's in that crappy marriage and her Perrin, who has become more likable this season, but I still liked when he was not as likable. Anyways,
it's all a story for another time.
Yeah. The running out of money and time is painfully relevant to me as I edit the feature film that I shot in 14 days. So I certainly will never blame no matter how many millions of dollars you run out of money and time.
Yeah.
But as a viewer, like, I don't need that whole scene. Oh man, that's going to be an issue for me because it's like you create something as fascinating as Mon Mothma's home life. Even if it's just a scene of his face falling, maybe there'll be a special edition.
Maybe something in the next few episodes, just like you're saying, like a little closure of some sort.
Yeah, I hope so. Great. Any other questions or concerns to talk about?
No. It ties into. The only question, it's not a concern, is this wonderful character of Bix Kayleen. And if I'm taking this as the end of her in the story, that we're not going to get in the next 3. I hope more. And I'm glad she's alive. It's tragic. Now I see her in my brain watching the news, and yay, we won. What happened on Scarif? Let me call. Like, they set it up so well. When this is all done, you and I will get back. Like, it was heartbreaking. And I just loved the character, loved the performance, and she did finally get a little bit of, her energy back, the mojo back after killing Gorse and all that stuff. So while that's complete, that's a character too. I want, not necessarily want more of in terms of storytelling, but just want to know, where is Bix? Is she okay? Is she all right? Because she deserves that. And we'll see. We'll see if she shows up in the last 3.
Jennifer, what are your thoughts on Bix resolution?
I did not like that she left. I really didn't. I think my challenge with it is I feel like I wanted her to be more active these past few episodes.
Yes.
And I would have, if she had left to go on a mission for the rebellion, I would have been fine with that. But her just kind of like ghosting, she's not ghosting because she left a message, but like, I just felt like it was, and I don't want to say this because I love this character, it was almost weak, even though I know that she's making the choice for the two of them, that he's going to, they're both going to, right, exactly. Yeah. It's a strong choice, and she's sacrificing their relationship for the rebellion, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. Quite frankly, I would have rather seen her die for the cause. I think it would have been more impactful if they're not going to show her on a mission, and maybe they will, right? We still have a few more episodes. I keep forgetting that. Maybe they will show her. The only good thing is she could come back. We could see her in somewhere else, in a movie, in a show. The fact that she's not dead.
Confirmed for the Mandalorian and Grogu film.
There you go. I like it.
She's become a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
This is not a prediction. This is a hope. I would lay no money on it. I know they've said right and left that it's going to take us right up to Rogue One, but I also feel like this show, it needs a closure of its own. This show can't just be like, you watch the last episode and it feels entirely incomplete unless you go watch Rogue One immediately.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that a part of this move with Bix is really playing into those themes of choosing the personal versus the cause, all that stuff. But that almost a choice of hope that in order to remove all these people from Cassian's life, we don't have to just murder them all.
Yeah, I like that.
In that, maybe I would be perfectly happy if we go right up to Rogue One in a meaningful way. And then we cut to Bix and B2 Emo, watching the Endor celebration fireworks somewhere together, knowing she talked so much about the end and being focused on this will end and we will win. It would be beautiful to see her at the end, knowing that it was all worth it.
I agree with them.
So again, not a prediction, I've learned not to predict. But a hope. I think that would be really nice.
Okay. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
My other hopes, I would love more clarity on Clea. She's such a fascinating character and has only become more strong. And I really like in the last couple of arcs where everybody treats Luthen like the leader, but she's the one who is truly unstoppable in that relationship. Luthen's the one who pushes everybody else, but she keeps pushing Luthen, and so fierce with Cassian in these episodes that I would love a little bit more of who she is, how she came to be here, and is she going to die? And so more clarity on Clea. And then I wonder how much of the final arc is about what happens to Luthen.
Merging. Yeah, Death Star.
Yeah, Ken, what are your Luthen thoughts or hopes for the big finale?
I did like his "You going to Yavin?" No Yavin for me. Love that. I think he's gonna go, and it's just a matter of is it as pointless as some of the other characters' deaths, meaning like it's just a blip and it's gone, or is it another dramatic sunless sky speech? Both might work for me. And who pulls the trigger if there's a trigger to be pulled? Like what's going on? There's a lot of mystery around it to me, and one of the big things left to explore for me. Love what you're saying about Clea. Fascinating character. I mean, again, there's Bale never mentioned Leia, who is in the Junior Senate at this point in the story. So Clea is Leia. You guys, it's been on the internet. Keep going back.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah.
Well, I wish they would have introduced a character named Luke, who is secretly Luke. Then
Luke.
Then it would all tie together. Any other predictions or hopes for the big finale from you, Jennifer?
It would be actually interesting if Luthen doesn't die. It would actually be that would not be predictable if he somehow like rides off into the sunset on his bike
with the sun in the sky. Luthen,
Yes,
you got a sun.
yes.
You got a sun full sky.
In a sun-filled
Exactly.
space.
Yeah.
He's on Endor. He's
He
around a
goes, like,
tree.
look backwards.
Yeah, he's around a tree just
Yeah.
watching the Death Star explode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I emotionally, I feel like that Luthen having some reckoning with he needed to make all the horrible sacrifices he did, and maybe he needed to make the horrible choices and run the Empire in this run the rebellion in a cold, isolated way for a while. And as it becomes something different, does he accept that, or does he double down? And that would be a fascinating end if he is unwilling to accept it and is in this last arc pushing Cassian in the devil on his shoulder. Or it'd be fascinating if he was like, I did my time and they don't need me anymore, and I am going to sit on a porch and rock with my country time lemonade in the sun-filled space.
The Bartles and James wine cooler.
All right. Final question we always do is, hey, if you could have a toy or any other merch based on these episodes, what would it be? I don't have anything fancy, so I'll just throw mine out. Love the moment where Mothma ditches her blue coat and is kind of like, it's so transformational. She's just in the white. And I really, they haven't made a good modern 3 3/4 from Andor Mothma action figure. So I want Mothma with a blue coat shedding action. Just throws away the jacket.
Similar vein,
Ken?
I think there was maybe a Lego set, but I do love her speeder. It's so classy. It's a high end car there that she's got. So give me a detailed 6-inch scale Chloris driver included of her in Mothman and Perrin. Give me a Perrin. I need a Perrin. I want to display that. I have a lot of shelf space right now. I'll display that.
Mm-hmm. Do you want a battle damage Chloris with a blaster burn in his chest?
Well, like the old He-Man style where you can flip it, so it's normal to damage.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Jennifer, it comes to you. Any toy or merch based on these episodes?
The data pad cover. So like my kid has for her iPad cover, but hers is like all these pastel colors. I swear to God, I feel like the prop person took that cover and just somehow painted it with more Star Wars-y colors to make it look grittier. I want that. I want that iPad cover, even though I don't have an iPad, but that's what I want. I want a Star Wars data pad.
A Star Wars data pad would be pretty great. Yeah, I remember seeing Anakin in Revenge of the Sith throw his down in disappointment. Like, I'd like to have one of those. And my seat probably rumbled in the 40X when he threw the data back. That's it for my notes. Anything else from you, Ken?
No, wonderful discussion, important episodes, and we're happy you're all here, especially anyone finding us for the first time through our coverage here. There. On that note, we'll get out of here. You can find us on social media at ForceCenter Pod. Our Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. If you're over there, Instagram, YouTube as well, subscribe here, leave a comment, thumbs up, all those good things. Thanks again for helping us get past 10,000 subscribers. Small, humble number for us, but it means a lot. Podcast is available in a lot of spots. Just search, you'll find us. Merch in 2 spots, TeePublic and Fourth Wall. Links down below on YouTube. Patreon.com/ForceCenters, where you can support us directly. Get into our Discord. For me, you can follow me at Catnapsuck. And my website, catnapsuck.com, though I've learned unless you're on Google, then you can't get to it, but if you're on Safari, you can. I got to call my host site thingy. It's a mess. But May 30th, if you're local, Flappers Comedy Club, Yoo-Hoo Room, 7:30 p.m., doing a co-headlining show with Mark Ellis. Just confirmed, so I'll have more information on that. Jen, where can I find you?
One quick thing, I did love the Hollow News reporters. I thought that was well done, done sparingly. Of course, I want to be there, but I liked who they cast. And if you'd like to see my reporting adventures, you can head to my Instagram at Jennifer Landa or at Jennifer Landa 1138 on TikTok.
There you go, Joseph. You're out in the wonderful. What are you? Northwest? What do they call you? Middle, Northwest, Northeast, Midwest,
because it was. From the perspective of the East Coast, the middle of the West, when people were swooping through our nation.
Anyways,
yes,
take it
Midwest, Minnesota, close to dangerous Canada. I joke. And I did actually. I forgot about one other note. I love that the code was "I have friends everywhere."
Yeah.
What a great way, also, for that theme of: do we need to be fighting together? Do we need to be isolated alone? It's an ironic code for Luthen and a truthful code for how Mothma is going to build the rebellion. So, I have friends everywhere. Speaking of having friends everywhere, you can follow me on Blue Sky, or you can sign up for my weekly blog letter, Finish Your Monsters. I've been mentioning this for a couple of weeks on ForceCenter, and a lot of ForceCenter friends have signed up, and I really, really appreciate it. I have so much fun doing that blog letter. So if you'd like to find it, you can just Google my name, Joseph Scrimshaw, and Finish Your Monsters. That's it.
That is it. That's it for us. We'll see you next time here on ForceCenter.